and it is now time for Expanding Awareness, in which I usually present live interviews, either regarding some aspect of the paranormal. I might feature holistic health, and we cover environmental topics and animal rights and such. And with us in studio, we have Andrew Cameron Bailey and Connie Baxtor Marlow. And they are original thinkers and filmmakers and social philosophers whose films, books, and workshops and public appearances spread their optimistic vision of the future of humanity. And they have a home base in Sedona, Arizona, and they spread most of their lives on the road, and they are authors of a book called The Trust Frequency, 10 Assumptions for a New Paradigm, The High Road to Happiness. And we are going to discuss New Age ideas with them. Good morning, folks.
Good morning.
Okay, what do you mean by 10 assumptions for a new paradigm?
Okay,
Andrew, well, and lean into the mic.
Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
All right. I'm not hearing anything in my phones, just so you know.
Okay, forgive me. There's a volume control underneath the panel here.
Okay. There we go.
Okay, well, 10 assumptions for a new paradigm.
Yes.
We believe that humanity is out of balance because we're operating on misinformation about the nature of the universe.
All right.
As a teenager, I asked the question, what has us out of balance? Because I saw the beauty and the love in the human heart. And I came from ancestors in the state of Maine who gave away all their money. And I'm like, well, okay, why are they doing this, and why is humanity acting the way we do? And so I asked that question, what is missing? And what came to me through my life was the Native American vision and understanding of the nature of the universe, the conscious, loving universe. So we have put together these 10 assumptions. Our lives led us to discovering this way of knowing, both Andrew and I, and we've put it together in these new 10 assumptions for a new paradigm that aren't actually new. They're old wisdom brought together in a new way so that we can see that we are loved by a conscious, loving universe.
Okay, what are the assumptions?
Well
number one. What's number one?
Well, hang on. Let's preface it, because otherwise, the listener just has no idea of what we're talking about, I'm afraid. We suddenly start in the meat of the book without even understanding the title and the subtitle. So the title's The Trust Frequency, which is kind of it's not a science term, it's a 60s hip term, good vibrations. Think of it in that term and you'll get it. It's about getting us into a higher vibratory state. It's about states of consciousness. The book's basically about consciousness. And how do we get there? The question that's always been in front of me is humanity is not performing up to its optimum capability. Einstein said we use roughly 10% of our capacity. So what do we do about that? And looking out at human behavior, it's horrific in many ways. We've done amazing, wonderful things, and we've done horrific things. How do we change that? What's it going to take? So this book is about that. It's specifically about how can we essentially upgrade the human operating system. What's the operating system? It's our assumptions. It is the thoughts, the content of our brain, of our mind, of our consciousness is organized into a set of assumptions that come to us at the age of 3 or 4 or 5. By a very young age, we have already received almost all of the cultural ideas, core beliefs that our culture has held for a very long time, generation upon generation, possibly thousands of years. So, and all of those assumptions taken together create a paradigm. The current paradigm, and paradigms change. Paradigms vary depending on what culture you belong to, where you live, what era you live in. If we were in the 13th century, we'd be in a different intellectual paradigm. We'd have a different set of assumptions about the nature of reality than we have right now. Right now, we're pretty much dominated by the Newtonian, Descartesian, what's called the reductionist, materialist, scientific paradigm. And it has put us in a particular situation as a species. And it's a dangerous situation. We've become dangerously misinformed, if you will. So our idea is to present the possibility of, everybody talks about a paradigm shift. So a paradigm is simply a set of assumptions, a set of beliefs. How do you shift the paradigm? Change those beliefs, or at least examine them. The problem, as I see it, is that we have these beliefs that we've just accepted. We take them from our leaders, from our buddies in high school, or wherever we got the ideas from. And here we are with a set of assumptions that actually has us with serious challenges.
They actually have us in a certain vibratory level, a certain frequency.
And what are the negative assumptions?
Well, what we did in the book is we presented 10 suggested assumptions. What if we just flipped the current reality into another reality? So here's the first assumption. We live in a conscious, loving universe.
There is only love.
So the current assumption is that we do not live in a conscious, loving universe. In fact, the universe is a mechanical system of quarks and electrons and galaxies and planets. It's not alive, it's not conscious, it has no idea we exist. So if we exist within a conscious, loving universe, that's incredibly different from living within a mechanistic universe that doesn't even know we exist. That's the first one. Okay?
All right. Now, why? So why are there wars? Why is there Syria, the Congo? One would not even know that there's such a thing as a new age, a new way of thinking on this planet if you live elsewhere other than in Sedona.
Well, we don't live in Sedona.
We keep our stuff in Sedona. Yeah.
And we keep our stuff there. But what we're proposing is that why we see these aspects of reality as not love, war, etc., is because we don't understand the nature of the love that drives the universe. And that is assumption number 2, that the nature of that love is unconditional. And it gives us everything we ask for. And our core beliefs, which are core beliefs of separation, there's the other, there is not enough, it's scarcity. So we have to fight with the other to get the scarce resources so we have power and control, so we're safe and our children are safe from the other. Okay? So it has to, the loving energies on the planet, the whole reality has to reflect these beliefs. And therefore, war is a natural outcome because we have to fight with the other. There is an understanding with quantum science at this point that we are all one. And this is the understanding of the Native Americans. All my relations, we are one. We are connected with all that is, including all of the rest of humanity and all of creation, animate and inanimate.
All right, now, what do you say to somebody who has a very difficult life, okay? They're depressed, they have no money. I don't even know if I have a question here, but how do you inspire somebody who's in a bad way thinking about the universe as this one big loving thing?
All right. So if your life experience has taught you that you're a victim, that you have no power, that you're powerless, that you have no control over the circumstances of your life, and that is your life experience that teaches you that, it's extremely difficult to communicate these ideas to someone in that state. I fully understand that. There's no question that we're not saying this is an easy, quick fix. Okay. There is something going on, I personally believe, on this planet, in our species, which I would like to call, by a term that came from a Native American friend, a great awakening. There is the very beginning of a great awakening. Our species has undergone, apparently, according to science, quantum leaps in consciousness in the past. Think about Australopithecus. If they are indeed our human ancestors, well, something happened. We changed. The way I like to put it is we swung down from the trees and jumped into our Ferraris and raced off into the sunset. Here we are, right? So
I
things have
I
things.
don't have a Ferrari. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're kidding. I thought everybody did. Oh, Volkswagen. Okay. So point being that shifts of the nature that we're talking about have occurred in the past. Therefore, there's no reason why they shouldn't occur in the future or the present. It may be a sort of really quick, rather instantaneous process. It may take time. Paradigm shifts tend to happen rapidly, just like the coming of ice ages. You know, there is a tipping point is reached and things change.
Right, but an individual, you're asking what an individual
Yeah.
can do, and what we are proposing is that the individual understand, and our definition of humanity is that we're a collection of individuals, divine, autonomous, sovereign beings who have chosen to incarnate on earth with a purpose and a gift on our soul's journey to wholeness. Okay, so if we can understand that and another assumption is there's only free will. Okay, there's only love, there's only free will, and the soul's journey to wholeness. So that everything in our lives has come to us to take us on that journey to wholeness. Have us understand that we are one with all that is. And so everything that's falling away now, the systems, the things we believed in, the things we thought we needed to be successful and be loved and be okay and be respected, they're all falling away now. We're being stripped down to our essence. And that's where we find our true self. So that's what's up. We're everything's going that was built on erroneous assumptions. There's no truth to the systems that we have been feeding our children to and feeding our lives to. So
I'm sorry to not have introduced Werner Grundl. What perspective
Werner's read the book.
have you learned from the book called The Trust Frequency?
Well, I was very surprised. I judged the book first on its outside, and of course it leaves a lot of questions. You know, what is trust, what is frequency, and then this Coco Belly equals MC square and all of that stuff.
Which is on the cover.
On the cover, right? But I found, Julie and I decided, my partner, my wife, decided we were reading this out loud to each other, which we do now and then with books that we think are important. And as we went through it, I found it very refreshing to read, because we as videographers, so is Andrew and Connie, we share this, that we actually run out in the world with our video cameras. We both have gotten in touch with the Native American people, so we understand that same kind of energy that the people in the city don't really understand so well. And they, in their book, combined that Native American thinking that usually looks at us, the white people, as the Washitsus, the people that came in and ate the stuff that they hung up from the trees, and the bears couldn't reach it, right? So this one furry guy came along and they called him a Washitsu. So we went out to the Lakotas, and as white people, we had a very hard time really being taken serious by them, because they told us we're living in a prison of war camp, and this is in America. So we, as videographers, we've gone together them too through all kinds of puzzles. Andrew comes from South Africa. He knows about the Bushmen. So they combine in their book the Aboriginal and indigenous people's thoughts with the idea of quantum physics and all this new physics that we all are trying to get a grip on. And so as I was reading through the book, I found it very refreshing, because all the other information I told you before, I'm looking at internet and information from there, and when I have something new to talk about, I'll come and we do another show, right? I was very pleased to find the book, read it, because it gave me a whole more balanced view on what I'm dealing with. Because when you look at internet, radio, television, all these electronic media events and medias, they don't allow the communication between people. And what they're actually doing with the book is keeping a positive dialogue going about what is going on, because most people are totally swamped with the world is bad. We have a friend, we told her about the book, and she came and said, what's a woman going to do that has no money? And, so we cannot compare. This book is about consciousness and how to navigate in the field of consciousness. And that's really what I got out of it by reading the book. It helped me a lot digesting my own research, my own way of doing visionary work. And so I just want to recommend the book for people that are interested in finding out more.
And again, the book is The Trust Frequency. And all right, let's talk about that idea of primitive cultures that often has a negative connotation, that they're, back in the Stone Age. What can you say about their level of consciousness compared to us Westerners, let's say?
I would have to say that the word primitive, which has gained a negative connotation in our current understanding, comes from the word primal. Prime, first. It is so primitive consciousness is the consciousness of the first peoples. So, as Werner just mentioned, I have spent time in Africa with the Bushmen, who are the oldest people. They carry the oldest DNA on the planet. And we barely can communicate verbally because their language is, their click language that is utterly incomprehensible to me, and my language is utterly incomprehensible to them. And yet there's something that occurs. It's not a philosophical, intellectual thing. It's something entirely different. It is to do with just being, just a state of being. They have I'd have to say, just a peace, a contentedness about them, despite the fact that currently these people I have a degree in anthropology from South Africa. The anthropology is about living communities, social anthropology. The Bushmen were at that time thought to be extinct. Wrong. So I've studied all of these indigenous cultures around the world, with the exception of the first people of the very country where I grew up. Crazy. The fact is that these people do exist. There are roughly 300,000 of them, and they influence people in a very interesting way. We've had them over here in America at conferences with Native American elders and these gatherings of wisdom keepers, and somehow the Bushmen communicate non-verbally something that's remarkable. So I would have to say that primitive man has at least as much consciousness as modernized Western industrialized man. I suspect that it's a higher consciousness because they haven't allowed themselves to come down into this box into which we have found ourselves.
Yes, and that primal consciousness we all have. We just have lost contact with it. And the Native Americans, I've spent extensive time with visionary Native American elders, Wallace Black Elk and various other visionary elders who've come into my life over the past 20 years. And that's the essence of this book is what I gleaned from my friendship with them, their way of life, their way of seeing the world. And I realized that the Native cosmology is a trust-based cosmology. You don't hoard. You give away. We are one. It's a trust-based. There will be more tomorrow. You don't hoard because there'll be more tomorrow. And this was what my ancestors in Maine, who gave Baxter State Park to the people of Maine, among other things, did. They gave it all away because they didn't believe in inherited wealth and hoarding. Okay, so there's another way of being, another way of seeing. And what that does is it puts us into another frequency where the laws are different. Henry David Thoreau has a beautiful quote at the end of Walden, in his conclusion to Walden. He says, "When one walks confidently in the direction of his dreams, he will pass a certain boundary. He will experience a success unexpected in common hours. The laws that apply to him will be expanded, or new laws will be made in his favor, and he will live with the license of a higher order of beings." And what he's saying there is, when we walk in trust, we cross a boundary into another frequency where the laws are different. You see, we can't even fathom what's there, but we know in our heart of hearts how to get there. We're just giving some tools. on reaffirming what we know already and what we've known since we were little children, but we gave up. We split our personality to survive in this world out of balance, but we're still those divine, autonomous, sovereign beings in there behind that mask, behind those beliefs that we haven't questioned, and we're just putting that on the table as a tool.
Okay, I want to remind you that you're listening to Expanding Awareness. And this is Victor Robert Venskus, and with us in studio is Andrew Cameron Bailey and Connie Baxtor Marlow, author of The Trust Frequency, 10 Assumptions for a New Paradigm. And also helping out with the interview is Werner Grundl, who is a video sphere. And I want to invite folks to give a call here at 617-552-4686, 617-552-4686 with your questions, comments, and opinions, and maybe even complaints regarding New Age thought, New Age ideas, and such. Do feel free to give a call. And we do have 6 lines, so do keep it ringing, and I'll push that button when it is your turn. Okay, we haven't gone over the assumptions.
Let me start, sort of hit the restart button just momentarily.
Please.
The title of the book being The Trust Frequency, and the Thoreau quote that Connie just recited there is specifically about trust. And what we're really talking about here, if you really simplify it, is the difference between living a trust-based life and living a fear-based life. Most of the current assumptions of certainly westernized humanity, non-indigenous humanity, but it seems to be applied to the entire species as far as I can tell. Most of us, humans, our fundamental beliefs, if you really look at them, are fear-based. We're even supposed to be afraid of God, Give me a break,
Yeah, in fact, a building here at BC, it says, "Fear of the Lord is true wisdom."
Oh no!
And I just have such a hard time with that, because you see, fear of the Lord. Now, what's the Lord? Is the Lord? I'm
someone that lords over you.
That's
well,
right.
Then on our money, we have "In God We Trust."
Right.
Yeah,
So here we are,
see?
the split.
That's the
personality.
split. Do we
Right
fear?
there.
You see, and what's the Lord? The Lord actually, in our book, is the loving universe. Are you going to be afraid of the loving universe? Why on earth should you be afraid of the loving universe? So if we have this fear-based paradigm, we inevitably create the world we see today, with all the separate nations, the armies, the immigration departments, the passports, the cops, the judges, the prisons, the starving people, for God's sake. We don't have to do that. All of these things are created without exception through human choice. And we're talking about human choice. And because we're running on this defective operating system, to use a computer metaphor, because we're running on a system that is programmed using certain fundamental assumptions, we cannot do anything but what we're doing. More and more laws, more and more weapons, more and more problems, per se. The only solution that we can see is to get down underneath it all. We can't keep putting Band-Aids on the hemorrhage. We're not going to fix it by some New Age la-di-da thing. That's not going to work. We have to get deep. We have to go into our subconscious beliefs, examine them, look into them, dare to look into the mirror, and even if one person can make that change, it spreads. It's like the pebble being dropped into the pond, and eventually it reaches those people you were talking about in the Congo, and the terrible things that are happening in the world, because we're actually one species.
Werner.
I'd like to add something to this now, because an observation that I made from traveling both to Japan to document the atom bomb survivors and once to Africa, and went to refugee camps. And what I observed is the way the language spreads around the globe is primarily through, let's call them, religious institutions. For example, when I was in Ghana, wherever there was electricity, it was actually a little church community, and the rest of the people had no electricity. It was dark. And they're bringing with their thoughts, with their language, they're continuing this kind of process. I'm just remembering John Trudell. He has this song where he says they're using it as a mining tool. In other words, we have been so conditioned to think of the world as a mechanism. In a mechanism, you have to have laborers and slaves in their work, and they slave in their labor. And this has crept into our consciousness, and we can't even imagine that there's anything else. Now, some of us are sitting here. When we were younger, we dared to jump out a little bit. And now as we're getting older, we are more sure of what we actually discovered there by jumping out, by leaving the safety. And so the book is sort of a result of trying to help think in a different way that's actually inherent in us, except the language that we commonly hear doesn't seem to reflect it. You know, we hear people screaming, angry. The Bilderberger conference had an alternative group there, and each time I listen to what they're saying, they're screaming and yelling. And I'm saying to myself, my goodness, these people all have to find their own power inside. Everyone seems to want to encourage us, let's get together. But the way, and I was told when I started this visionary work I'm doing, they told me, you can't change the world. All you can do is change yourself. And this is what the book is leading to, is helping people to discover in themselves what is applicable, regardless of what their condition is, whether someone just died or whether they're poor. There is immense power in each human being that they're not aware of. They're totally blind and conditioned to believing whatever. Most people, they get trained out of them by the time they're 7 that there's anything left in them. Because let's say you go to school at 7, one person is the good person. If he gets pointed out, or she as the real one who knows, and everyone else feels we cannot go up to that standard. And I caught this in an interview with a person who came from Iran, a woman. She pointed out how most people, by the time you're 7, you're totally, you don't trust yourself anymore.
Well, and we do that. We don't believe that it's an outside conditioning. We believe that we actually do that to ourselves. It's a choice we make in order to survive, in order to be loved, to be successful, etc. So, and we have the choice to stop, and we have the power, what Werner's talking about. And our third, you asked what the assumptions are. The third, we've done the first and second assumption. The third and fourth assumption. The third assumption is that we create reality by the power of our consciousness. And the fourth assumption, we define those aspects of consciousness that we have control over. And we call those the 7 A's. And those 7 A's are awareness, attention, assumption. Well, first, awareness, assumption comes first. Attention, where we put our attention, what our attitude is about where we put our attention, what we are aligned with, what our action is, which is key, if we act from this place or don't we. You know, we can know all we know and feel all we feel, but if we don't act from that place, we haven't shifted anything. And then allowing, knowing that it's a conscious, loving universe that is working through us to bring peace on earth and heaven on earth. That's all there is, as far as I'm concerned. That everything that happens on this planet is to bring humanity to the place where we will choose to open our hearts and walk in balance with all of creation.
All right. My favorite question is not one that most of my interviewees like, is the question of fate and free will. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. A psychic, an astrologer predicts an event and it happens. So where is free will?
All right. So there's, what are they, assumptions 5 and 6.
Right.
Assumption 5 is that free will is an absolute law of the universe, which brings up an instant paradox. Hang on, I'm not in control. I don't have free will. So that whole wonderful philosophical discussion that's gone on for thousands of years between free will and determinism, it's set in stone, it is written in the stars. But it's a paradox, because in a certain sense we're split. On this level, I exercise my free will in order to move toward a certain goal. On another level, something perhaps higher, we call it circumstance, may well intervene. So circumstance is you see, because there is no separation, because there's nothing but the universe, there's nothing but what is in its trillion manifestations. We see it, we see all of these distinctions, these separations. So my mind says, I want to get in my car and drive to New York. Circumstance says, you're going to get a flat tire. You're going to pull over to the side of the road. Werner's going to show up and help you out and become your best friend. And you're going to end up going on a completely different path and end up in Sedona, Arizona.
Well, and this feels like determinism, that circumstance you've been... anyway, we have a funny saying, but I don't want to say it on the radio. Fucked by the fiery finger of fate.
Do not say that. You're not allowed to use those words on the air.
Sorry.
The FCC will be on you in a minute.
Anyway, we feel that we've been taken someplace we don't want to go. And the way we resolve that is that we say that with this definition of humanity that I just said to you, we have chosen to incarnate on earth with a purpose and a gift on our journey to wholeness. That's our overarching act of free will. When we chose to incarnate and go on this journey, we said to the loving energies, because it's all love, that you can take me on my journey to wholeness. No matter how much it hurts, you have permission. So the unconditional loving energies show up in the form of circumstance to take us to our true selves, because we want to go there. We want to be one with all that is. We want to be the loving beings we came here to be.
And why is it that religion is so problematic for humanity to create such discord in the world?
It's extraordinary, isn't it? In other words, throughout history there have been certain visionaries, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, John Lennon, you name it. You can have these...
Frank Zappa.
I'm with you, bro. and so...
Captain Beefheart.
Captain Beefheart, there you go. And we can have a whole conversation there. Point being that certain individuals, they didn't actually found the religions, but somehow they developed a set of followers. And it's the followers who kind of locked that in to a fixed cosmology or understanding of the nature of things, which whatever philosophical basis it originally had, and it becomes something entirely different. And then the whole sort of the fear-based assumptions are still underlying this beautiful thing that came in over the top. So coming way in high is this beautiful vision. Underneath it is the ancient fear-based reality. And the people who tend to move to the top in that reality are those who really were able to manipulate it very well. So they end up being the leaders of the religions, the mullahs and the priests, and so you get your priestly caste. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking about the Aztecs or the Incas or the Romans, you still have the same situation. And so the fundamental assumptions underlying the religions are still fear-based. Fear God. Give me a break. My Muslim friends are terrified of doing something wrong because they will be punished by this authoritarian God. I personally don't get that, because the universe is in fact a living, conscious, loving entity.
And we believe that the earth has been in a field of fear. So the dominant energy on the planet has been fear. So even a trust-based paradigm. Christianity is ultimately a trust-based paradigm.
Yes,
Jesus,
it is.
Okay? The Native American cosmology is a trust-based paradigm. The Sufi is a trust-based paradigm. But the fear has influenced everyone, including those with a trust-based paradigm. So we believe that the earth is actually moving into a different energy, and that energy is love, and that there's no energy anymore for this fear-based behavior. We're just playing out the last vestiges of fear.
Okay, the number here is 617-552-4686, and we are discussing certain New Age ideas and thoughts. Good morning, you're on the air.
Good morning, Victor and friends. This is Haskell.
Hey, Haskell, good to hear from you.
Hi, I really think that what you're talking about and doing here is fantastic. We really certainly need more of this, and I will definitely be looking forward to reading the book and getting involved in whatever you're doing there. I'm amazed at how many people just don't realize how much of their life is based on assumptions. They think that they have this choice, and they run around, but they don't realize that how many of their quote-unquote choices that they make are based on their assumptions, and they never question or look at what their underlying assumptions are. So it's fantastic that you're calling everyone's attention to that fact, and that they're really almost, a lot of people are just running around unconscious doing things and not realizing that it's all based on what they assumed in the first place, and culture and all those things. So it's really great that you're bringing that to light.
Well, thank you so much for your support, and you can get the book at thetrustfrequency.net.
Oh, that was the next question, is what your website is. The Trust Network?
No, thetrustfrequency.net.
Thetrustfrequency.net.
Not .com, .net.
Okay, thetrustfrequency.net.
And we'd love to hear from you.
That's a very, Haskell, that's a very informative website. It'll tell you a lot about, well, the book is one aspect of what Connie and I are doing. And
Super. Well, you know, and this whole thing, he hit on another one of my buttons, is this whole fear-based thing. It just absolutely drives me nuts. You know, in the media, you watch television, the news every night, and it's just one horrible story after another. You know, somebody got beaten up, raped, robbed, attacked, fires, crimes, police getting shot. It's just a whole litany of that. And you read the newspaper, and it's one tragic story after another. And then they beat this fear into you. You know, as you know, we had this Boston Marathon bombing, and for a whole week everybody was hysterical. And the last day, when you had one 19-year-old kid running around, they shut down 5 cities, told everybody don't even leave your house, and they shut down the subways, the transportation, the taxi cabs. People coming into Logan Airport couldn't get home, and they told everyone to stay in and put your hands over your head as if an atom bomb was coming to you.
I took a nice walk in Harvard Square and Central Square that day.
And it was deserted, right?
Yes, it was wonderful.
We have to face our fear, and that's what this is all about. And we have to look at ourselves as America, and I think there was just a huge message in this situation, and catapulting us into our fear. That's what 9/11 did. We have to walk through our fear. We have to experience it and look at it and say, okay, I'm not going there, you know, and lift ourselves to this higher frequency. There's no way out. Einstein said no problem was ever solved in the same consciousness in which it was created. He meant it. There is no way out. In this paradigm, we have to move to a higher level of thinking and consciousness. And thank you so much for bringing that up.
Well, there's no doubt we're going to get there at some point. I just wish we'd get there sooner rather than later, and we need people like you to go around and do what you're doing to get everybody, to get us there quicker than...
Okay, Haskell.
So much, Haskell.
Thanks so much.
One other quick question, though. What else, other than writing the book and talking on, what other kind of things are you doing in this to promote this?
Well, go to thetrustfrequency.net and check it out. We made a film called In Search of the Future.
Oh, great.
Where we interviewed, it's a feature-length documentary, and we interviewed indigenous elders in about 14 different indigenous cultures around the world.
People we've known for 20 to 40 years, so they were expressing stuff that they don't normally speak of.
Because we had built trust with them. So this whole thing's about trust versus fear, living a trust-based life versus
fantastic.
a fear-based life.
And we're presenting at the Thoreau Society in mid-July.
All right.
Einstein and Thoreau,
All right.
2 mystics who changed the world.
Oh, I'll be there. Fantastic.
Okay,
That's wonderful. Hey, thanks a lot.
Thanks for
Okay.
calling in, yeah.
Bye-bye.
Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning. This is so exciting. I love what she just said about we have to go through the fear because it's the yin and the yang. You have to have, I have so many assumptions from my childhood that are coming forward to me right now, and I'm also finding that synchronicity is playing a tremendous role. I'm seeing it happen in other people. I will definitely check out the trustfrequency.net, and I thank you so much for this program.
Oh,
Well,
thank you. Wow.
The book is also available online at Amazon.
I'm going there when I get to work.
But let me tell you, you get a free copy of our film. If you order the book from us on our website, you get a free copy of our film. If you go to Amazon, You don't. So
Just because we don't know how to do that, so
Yeah.
we
do
just.
they take checks? Because I don't trust the computer when they with the credit card. I don't have credit cards.
Yeah. Well, I don't know the
well,
alternative.
give
to
us a
that.
call and we can work
I'm
it
going to do
out.
that.
Connect with us in person, and we'll hand it to you.
I'll do that. Thank you so much for being.
Okay, thank you so much for calling and contributing. The number here is 617-552-4686. Werner, do you want to chime in?
Yes. Somehow the name Tyler Desjardins just came into my head, and he was pointing out that consciousness develops gradually, not like, for example, in a forest, all trees reach sort of the same level. There's no tree that jumps up much higher than the other ones, and so in terms of our consciousness developing now, this is now 2013. We went through Y2K. We went through 2012. I all along assumed that whatever was projected by people was not going to happen, because I think the energy that people are putting out into this consciousness field to make things better is probably the majority of the naysayers, and we just don't know that yet. And what I'm personally hoping is that we have more dialogues like this, not only on radio but on television, so that people can actually tune into this and participate and sort of.
Okay, we have a caller on line. Good morning, you're on the air.
Hello, Victor.
Hello.
Hi, this is Rick calling.
Hey, Rick, good to have you on board.
And I'm enjoying the discussion, and I'd like to ask the authors, your guests, some tidbits of information about the Bushmen. Now, how did they communicate? You said nonverbal communication, right?
No, that's not exactly true. In terms of a Western person, for example, showing up in Africa and sitting with a Bushman, verbal communication is next to impossible, simply because you don't share language. No, they have the most sophisticated language on the planet. It's full of all these wild clicks. You know, the click languages, there are actually 5 or 7 different types of clicks in the way they communicate.
And dolphins make clicking sounds.
Yeah, it's a whole different way of human communication, but it's incredibly complex and subtle, and it's been very difficult for us to learn their languages and understand them.
Also, it's not that they're communicating non-verbally. You're not talking about psychic communication.
You know, I think we could also say that indigenous people throughout, especially hunter-gatherers, have or had a capability that we may have lost. Irvin Laszlo talks about this, that there are human capabilities that we have lost because we simply you don't use it, you lose it. So we may well, in different phases of human experience, have had psychic, nonverbal communication, what we would call paranormal methods of communicating, which we still have, and certain of us still have it. We all know about psychics and soothsayers and mediums. That make sense?
Yes, I know we have that, because as a musician, I communicate with people in that way as well. It's nonverbal, but it's still sound, and I know it gets into people's consciousness in a sort of an unconscious way, an invisible way.
Yeah, so we're talking about attuning ourselves individually to a higher reality, and I suspect that once we do that as individuals, we're going to become a lot more psychic.
And we're actually giving people the courage to trust that small voice within. We all have the connection to the all that is communicating through us, and we just don't listen. And it's all inside of us. So it's a matter of listening and then acting on what we hear, taking up the courage. And that's what this book is about, is to give the courage to act according to your inner promptings, your heart, and just let go of the fear-based paradigm that says you can't do it. You've got to go to work. You've got to do this, even in a job you hate. You just got to know. Joseph Campbell said, "Follow your bliss." You've got to know that if it's not fun, it's not worth doing. You've got yourself out of kilt with your path, your journey, your gift to bring to the planet.
Okay, we're going to have another call here. Good morning, you're on the air.
Good morning, Victor. I'm wondering what your guests have to say about any connections with ETs or maybe Sirius or Pleiades.
Well, I, for one, we don't have a personal contact with these folks, but these in our film.
It's kind of odd to hear them called folks, but go ahead.
The Native Americans, and all the Native Americans that I've known for 20 years, they all have a direct, not they all do, but the elders and basically the cultures have contact with the people that we call the Space Brothers. You'll hear in our film them saying the people you call the Space Brothers, the people you call aliens. They have an ongoing relationship with these people. So I personally and Andrew, we don't have a personal connection, but we know there's so much we don't know or understand.
Yeah, one of my favorite lines was from Guido Sarducci, who used to be on
Saturday Night
Live. He said that you get hypnotized to forget that you've seen UFOs. So if you've never seen a UFO, chances are you see them all the time.
And different people have different gifts, different levels of awareness. You know, we're all here to bring our gift to the party.
And we're talking about upgrading our species, whoever we are on this planet, this thing we call Homo sapiens. We're talking about upgrading the operating system of our species because we see that as the only way. The only way out of the current situation is up. And by up we mean higher consciousness, higher awareness.
So, do you feel that regular folks have some power? All right, we have Obama in the presidency, we have Putin, we have Sung Yong-il, and all these people running the world. Where do us little people
They just think they're running the world.
involve?
Yeah,
it's the consciousness. It's the critical mass of consciousness that has
everybody
the power.
without exception has importance and these abilities. There's no fundamental difference between Vladimir Putin and the guy you saw on the street begging for dimes, you know.
And the USSR collapsed. The Berlin Wall came down. Apartheid left South Africa. There is power of consciousness. There's something bigger than all of us. If we give
brought
power,
by the man in the street, by the little people.
right, and if we give power to this illusion, to this illusory power, we have to go inside and give power to the people, power to our own knowing. And that's what America is built on. That's the vision that the founders of America had, that the individual would rise to its higher conscience and would bring the abundance for all, liberty and justice for all. We're not doing it because we're operating from a lower frequency, a lower set of assumptions. So that the template is there in the American Constitution, in the vision that we hold for all of humanity. They're all coming here because they believe in something that we can be.
And the template is in John Lennon's wonderful song, Imagine. Just take that song, implement that, job done.
Mm-hmm.
Teach the children that that's the true nature of the universe.
Yeah.
Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
There you go. Teach your children well. Yeah.
Teach your children well.
Okay, Werner.
What I'm just by hearing these songs and titles,
Yes.
I'm always made aware of that the multitudes of people that have been hearing these songs for over 30 years, and they all seem
40, 50 now.
40, 50, and they all seem to be in the woodworks. No, it's not. It is as if it has never reached anyone. And my feeling is, the control mechanism, let's call it, that wants to keep us asleep, is that strong that people just don't have the belief in themselves.
I don't believe that, Werner. I believe it is us. We have the choice. There's no control mechanism. They are us. They're a manifestation of us. And if we look at the other, we're just perpetuating that separation. We have to know they are us. They're it's all an outgrowth of our thinking.
You know, the Great Awakening has begun, and there's no stopping it. It's out of control.
No, I mean,
thank heaven.
No, I totally agree with that. I misspoke when I used the word control mechanism because by control mechanism, it could be a policeman on the street that told us not to turn here, or it could be anything that is. We do have the power to change all this. Yes, I'm not saying the controls that we're living with is I'm just saying many people that have woken up don't see enough in the big media that reflects and reinforces their own beliefs, that people are basically scared and afraid to go out on their own.
What we have to do is turn off the media.
Right.
Stop reading the newspaper. Turn it off. Turn off NPR, which is blasphemy for people who feel that they're conscious. But it's feeding all the negativity. It's empowering the illusion, and it's.
But don't you think it's worthwhile knowing what is going on in the world?
You create what you put your attention on.
You create.
Just that
You
simple.
empower what you put your attention on.
It's just
So
that simple.
There's only one way to actually change everything, and that's to change everything. By continuing to be engaged with the current system, you will continue to be engaged. You will not change it. Let me
or
say
yourself, because you'll stay in the lower frequency.
Let me just go back to one thing on this subject, because we only have a few minutes left. Werner brought up Teilhard de Chardin, who was a French Jesuit priest about 100 years ago, who had a vision of something he called the Omega Point, a time in human evolution where something would change, something would shift. Okay, so, and we've just heard about the Mayan calendar and the shift on December 21st, 2012, which happens to be the publication date of our book, by the way. It was published on that very date. Something has been predicted by the psychics, the soothsayers, the mediums, the prophets throughout history. And we live at a time where something has changed enormously, and it is a technological shift. We now have the Internet. The Internet allows us to communicate with millions, if not billions, of people in real time throughout the planet. Anybody who is connected can receive information and begin to see the world in a way that's different. And what we must do is move away. We just have to drop. Buckminster Fuller said, don't try to change the paradigm. Just invent a new one. The old one will just fade away. That's all we can do. We need to stop buying newspapers. We need to stop, because the whole money thing is so locked in. The only way is ignore it, turn your back, walk away.
I like reading Doonesbury, so I'm not going to give up my newspaper.
Oh, right.
I'm sure there's Doonesbury online somewhere where you don't have to get the rest of the stuff.
Okay, we have time for maybe one or more phone calls here, and it might as well be yours at 617-552-4686. 617-552-4686. And my guests for this morning's program are the authors of a book called The Trust Frequency, 10 Assumptions for a New Paradigm, with Andrew Cameron Bailey and Connie Baxtor Marlow. 617-552-4686. I don't think we went through all the assumptions. Can you quickly do that?
Sure. And I just want to say people can access our information on the thetrustfrequency.net. But the other assumption...
Well, why don't you hold that thought? Let's take this call.
Right.
Good morning. You're on the air with Andrew and Connie.
Hey, good morning. How you guys doing this morning?
We're great, thank you.
I just quickly wanted to reiterate, I was fortunate enough to see, I don't know if you've mentioned this guy before, but his name is Eckhart Tolle.
Oh, yeah.
And, yeah, you know, I just wanted to make sure that he was mentioned during the show. He's put out some good material. I haven't even read his first book yet, but his second book, A New Earth, has really had a profound positive influence on me. So.
All right.
And what did you most glean from the book?
I think probably what you guys referenced earlier about really kind of not assuming. You know, sometimes people, you know, they're struggling. You know, if they're arrogant or if they're.
Yeah, and his first book was The Power of Now, and Oprah put him on the show, and it became a bestseller.
And that is one of our
assumptions. And one of our assumptions, Victor was just actually asking, what are the remaining assumptions we haven't mentioned? And one of them is that there is only now. We exist in this precious present moment. And because we're usually so tied up in either the past or the future, we have regrets about the past or nostalgia about the past, and fears or desires for the future, that when are we ever right here, right now, in this moment? And every spiritual path and every spiritual master says you have to be here, this breath, right here, right now.
Be here now.
Be here now. That's it.
One of my favorite poets was Kenneth Patchen, and he had a line where he says, all eternity is now.
Yes, yes, yes. So that's one of our assumptions. Another one of our assumptions is that humanity is on an evolutionary upward spiral, leading inexorably to peace on earth and heaven on earth, the trust frequency.
Okay. Yeah, we can't wait to get on her show.
I'll put in the word for you guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Oprah is all about this stuff. I mean, this is her mission and vision in life is to bring this to the people. And she's doing an amazing job.
She's really dedicated to this work.
Okay, thanks. TheTrustFrequency.net.
Thank you so much for contributing. And you were tuned to 90.3 WZBC in Newton, and this is Expanding Awareness. And this is Victor Robert Venskus with you, and my guests for this morning. Live in studio are Andrew Cameron Bailey and Connie Baxtor Marlow. And helping us out also is Werner. And once again, we can take a few more calls here at 617-552-4686 as we await to make sounds of dissent.
And the TrustFrequency.net is where you can obtain the book when you get a free film. It's $20, and
no commercials,
hear from you.
I tend to get away with that.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
And it's simply about the summary of this whole thing. It can be summarized in 4 words: trust the loving universe. It's about moving out of fear into trust, no matter what it looks like out there.
But do you not believe there is a duality, good versus evil? Evil people oppressing others. Where do you go with that idea?
Yeah, as long as we buy into the fear-based set of assumptions, we inevitably have
But it
things.
isn't we, it's other people who are
No, there is no other.
doing the nasty.
There is no other. There's only love. So I would have to say, yes, we're beyond. This
we-
level is beyond duality. You have to see that everything is love. And God is love. Okay? Why? How is God love? If there's this evil in the world. The evil flipped around is live, right? So anyway, live,
It's part of
And then we can go, God is dog.
Okay, but what's a dog? Unconditional love.
You better be afraid of the dog.
No, what is a dog? But unconditional love made manifest. So
No, some of them will tear you apart.
okay.
Well,
Depends on your energy, man.
let me say one thing for closing.
Depends on the assumptions the dog
Depends
is
on your
operating
consciousness.
Let me say one thing for closing. I think it is really about consciousness development, because without the consciousness development, we won't be able to handle the technology we're coming up with. This is what, when I studied engineering, this didn't exist even. And now, as I'm looking more at ancient history, why did Atlantis go down? It's not necessarily because an asteroid hit us. It's possibly that they had some very advanced technology. Their consciousness was not up to par, and they blew it to pieces. So we have to learn from the past not to repeat those kind of mistakes. And I think it's a very serious undertaking. It's not anything that can be compared with good and bad. It's way beyond that. When I was a kid and I heard about Jesus Christ and telling us at a certain time we would all be doing what he was doing then 2,000 years ago. Well, it is now 2,000 years
And
later.
we can choose it.
It is 2,000 years later now, and we still don't even grasp what potential we have. We just totally throw it in the trash, like to the pigs.
But we now have the World Wide Web, which
Well-
is technology that's hooking all of humanity together. It's never happened before. We each have a piece of the puzzle. We're each bringing our gift to the party. We're putting this puzzle together, and we're seeing something that's never been seen before.
Right.
And I believe that this technology is actually training us to access the unified field where all information exists.
Like Nassim Haramein says, the universe is a feedback system. In other words, if we are not feeding back into the system, it's stale. But by nature, it is a feedback system, which is something we didn't go into in terms of the physics of it all. But underlying of what they're talking about in their book is exactly what Nassim Haramein is researching, and others too. And I think in the immediate future, I think a lot of stuff will come out this year. That's my personal.
Change your assumptions, and the world changes with you. It's amazing, but it's true. I'm actually seeing that now. Having put this work into effect for some time, I'm actually looking out there and seeing the actual outside world. My inside world is different, but I'm seeing different behavior on the outside.
Right.
I'm very optimistic, as you can tell. And Connie is just relentlessly optimistic.
Because I know there's only the coming of peace on earth and heaven on earth. That's what it's all about. It's an exercise. We have to choose it.
All right. I know several people now who are undergoing some very serious matters, cancers and big illnesses. What do you say to folks like that who, are in a life sucks mode?
Well, there's only love. There's only the soul's journey to wholeness. And a lot of people who get these diseases, they know they access aspects of themselves and of their families and things that ultimately it's a great gift. And that's what we are bringing to the table. There's only love. There's only your soul's journey to wholeness and free will. So whatever it is coming out of love to you on your journey.
All right. Once again, the number here is 617-552-4686. 617-552-4686. And our guests for this morning's program are authors of The Trust Frequency. And if you have anything to add to the program, whether you agree with these ideas or have your own vision, give us a call, 617-552-4686. I want to understand the title a little better, Trust Frequency.
All right. The trust frequency is a state. I did a lot of Sufi work for about 35 years. I did Sufi practices. And the Sufi practice is all about actually entering a higher reality, moving beyond illusion into the real with a capital R, and getting yourself into a higher vibratory state. And it's exactly what we were all talking about back in the 60s, the higher vibration. Bob Marley talks about the higher vibration. We know this. It's in our culture. It's in popular culture that there is a state of being that is higher than what we currently see in the newspapers, on the news, on the street. So the trust frequency is, if you will, a spiritual state or a state of consciousness that's practical in that it's easy to get there. You actually can get there. It's not that you don't have to go and sit in a cave for 40 years. You don't have to
eat LSD.
You could. That might actually that would almost certainly give you a glimpse. Those of us who did those practices back in the day got a glimpse of something. But then the challenge is, how do we get there? How do we get there without having to be dependent on anything, including drugs, including gurus? The age of the gurus is past. It is time for us as humans to step forward and elevate our own consciousness through our own intelligence.
Yeah, and I've always known that there's something missing in the paradigm, and I didn't know what that was, and I knew something was coming to the planet that's never been here. And after a sweat lodge one night with Wallace Blackout, he said, man has doubted the Creator since the beginning, and that doubt has plagued him. So doubt is the Achilles heel. Doubt is the vibratory level that takes us out of the trust frequency, out of this place where we have access to, if we choose and understand that we can get there and transform all of our social interactions, our systems, and everything else. It's not about being someplace where we're not with our feet on the ground, operating in life as we know it. It's just going to be life, different from what we know it.
Thank you very much for expanding our awareness regarding the trust frequency. And once again, where can people get a hold of the book?
www.thetrustfrequency.net.
Okay, thank you very much for expanding our awareness regarding
Thank you for having us, Victor. It's been a treat. A real treat.
Thank you. And join me again, 7 a.m. with thereabouts for Lucid Sound.